Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining today's webinar. We'll just give it a minute or so to allow people to join us. In the meantime, let me introduce myself. My name is Lisa Chomet, and I'm the head of Partnership Strategic Growth at Charity Digital, and I will be your host today throughout the webinar. So, very warm welcome to all of you for joining today's session. Please do introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you are joining us from. Personally, I am joining from a quite sunny part of Kent, so I'm really hoping that is the same for all of you joining us. And our webinar today is titled From Spreadsheets to Strategy, How Charity Finance Teams Are Getting Out of the Weeds. This will be led by Andrew Faulkner, who's Sales Manager UK and Ireland at AccountsIQ, and his colleague Zaina Haider, Pre-Sales Consultants at AccountsIQ. We would like to make these sessions as interactive as possible, so we have 3 polls throughout the webinar, so please do engage with these and store up any questions you may have for the end. First, a very quick intro to Charity Digital for those of you who don't know us well, who are joining us for the first time. We are a registered UK charity, and our mission is to help other charities increase their impact by being more digital. Just before we start, I want to share a few house rules and pointers for today's session. The session is being recorded. It will be uploaded to watch on demand within a week's time. Any slides that are shared today with any resources will be made available to you. So don't worry if you've missed anything. Closed captions are available for today. So to enable these, you can click at the bottom of the Zoom window in the up arrow button next to closed captions and then allow show subtitles. During the webinar, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section, which is located on the Zoom menu bar for the team to address at the end of the presentation, usually 10 minutes before 2. If someone asks a question that resonates with you, you can upvote it. You can click on the thumbs up icon next to it. This will upvote it automatically, and so we will read it first. Finally, if you encounter any sound or image issue, please do let us know in the chat. We'll do our very best to get the session back to normal as soon as we can. And if there's any other issues, please just email us in the chat as well. And now, without further ado, let me hand over to Andrew and Zaina. Welcome.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Lisa.
you.
Great to be here today. Sorry for disturbing everyone's lunchtime, but thank you for committing an hour of your lunch. We've all got something on the desk in front of you to keep you going. Just a quick introduction to myself, and then Zaina will introduce herself. As Lisa said, I'm the sales manager for UK and Ireland markets at AccountsIQ. I'm sitting in Dublin today. I'm not actually in the UK, although I spend a lot of time over there these days with my team in North London. I'm 6 years with the business, originally as an implementation consultant, and then moving over to the dark side of sales. But I've always had a kind of a leaning towards the charity and not-for-profit sectors. I was kind of the charity lead in my early sales days here at AccountsIQ, but also during my onboarding days. And even away from the office, I'm involved in a couple of not-for-profit sports organisations, and my wider family is actually involved in quite a few charities across Ireland and the UK markets. Zaina?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Zaina. I'm the pre-sales consultant at AccountsIQ. My job is essentially to understand the finance function from the inside out before we ever even talk about software. So I spend a lot of time with FDs, finance managers, finance teams across the charity sector to understand what their day actually looks like versus what it's supposed to look like. I have a background in audit at EY, so I have a base understanding of what finance should look like and all the controls around that, and the gaps with what we're here to talk about today and how to streamline it better.
Great, thanks, Zaina. I fully appreciate that we are from AccountsIQ as a business, and obviously we're in the market as a SaaS platform, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through today's webinar. But a lot of what we're actually going to talk about is applicable to any platform. that you might be considering in that. And I'm always the first, and I tell my team as well, that if you were to talk to us at some stage, if we're not the right platform, we will tell you, and we'll probably guide you as to where to go, because not every system is created equal. Some systems out there in the market do things better than we do. We hope we do better things than some other systems as well. But yeah, like sometimes it's just useful to kind of just get a view on what's going on in the market and that. So where we're going over the next hour, although I promise we'll do our best not to use up the full hour for you today. Going to look at kind of going why the finance director, or your whatever title you may have, CFO, finance manager, etc. Why your job is almost impossible at this stage, from what you were actually hired to do, what your remit, as opposed to what you're actually doing day to day in your role. We're then going to look at kind of why the charity finance function is very uniquely hard compared to kind of commercial businesses out there. When you start layering in things like SORP, fund reporting, some of you might be multi-entity, but you always tend to be running much leaner teams than you'll find in the commercial space. What strategic finance looks like. So a real picture of a team that has broken down that cycle. And we have an example that we're going to share with you on that. The enabling layer, the three pillars, and where AIQ actually fits within all of that. A kind of a self-assessment piece that we're going to kind of talk through with you, and it'll just allow you to kind of gauge where you are yourselves in that kind of financial maturity piece. And then, as Lisa said earlier on, we do have that Q&A at the end. But as we're going through the session this afternoon, please throw any questions in the channel. We will try and answer them as we're going through it. Both Zane and myself will keep an eye on that. So, first poll question. So, I hope Lisa and her team in the background are going to throw this up for me. But is your month-end close still partly or entirely driven by spreadsheets? So if you want to vote away on that there in the background, and we'll come back to it later on. So as I said, most of the charity FDs that we talked to, and we talked to quite a lot of them, I'd say we're talking to about 5 to 8 new charities every week in our world. And it's spreadsheet, spreadsheet, spreadsheet. It's constant. They feel like they're in there being administrators rather than actually being strategists for the wider organization. It's not surprising. The vast majority of finance organizations and not-for-profits and that tend to be sitting on older tech stacks where the kind of the limits are quite clear to anyone who's operating on them. So whether it's very small microsystems, the likes of Xero and that, or whether you're on some of the older legacy platforms like Exchequer, or some of the old versions of Sun actually came up on a call there last week with one of my team. But look, there is a way of doing it, and there's a way of doing it without breaking the bank, basically. So what does your working day typically look like? And obviously everyone's a little bit different, but when we talk to charity finance leaders, the bit on the left is what they thought they were signing up for. They wanted to be strategic in their leadership, not just within the finance function, but obviously feeding back to other senior leaders in different departments, different programs in the charity, but also then across and up to the board and the trustees. That's really, really important. The reality is, though, you might be chasing figures across multiple spreadsheets constantly. You're manually reconciling if you do have more than a single entity within the organization. You're rebuilding reports sometimes that the requirements have changed, or maybe someone has overwritten the coding in those reports, so that there's always that question mark in the back of your head. And then your month end just seems to kind of roll into the next month end continuously. You're never kind of getting away from it. And charity finance is genuinely hard. And as I said, I have personal experience through my own not-for-profit and my wider family, and that it's not just kind of presenting your actual hard numbers, your sales, your direct cost of sales, your general overheads every month, and any adjustments on their journals on the balance sheet. You have these other layers around kind of restricted, unrestricted funding, which obviously falls in under the SORP reporting and the latest regulation changes around that. You've multi-entity, some of them might be vatable entities. If they're trading entities, some of them might not be vatable, kind of dealing with partial VAT within it. And then, as I said earlier, predominantly, and we see this from our own data internally, consistently, finance teams in the charity sector are a lot leaner than you're going to get in the commercial world. And there's an obvious reason for that. A lot of the time is it's kind of you're using your funds for the greater charitable good that your charity was set up for. So you can understand that. But it does mean there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot more requirements on the finance function in your charity. So coming up to our second poll here now, and thanks for those who've answered the first one. How many entities does your organization operate across? We typically find that about 70 to 80% of the charities we talk to are single entity. But when you go into that kind of other 20, 30%, it actually quite quickly can often jump to the kind of 4, 10 plus. I was talking to a charity yesterday, they 26 entities sitting in it, and there was the way they'd actually structured their geographic kind of outreach projects that they were involved in. So moving on now to the next one. Sorry, lost my mouse for a second, apologies. So the external pressure layer that comes into the charity world. So the environment is definitely getting harder every year. I remember being at a charity event in London a couple of years ago, and they were talking about we're in this kind of volatile environment. All you have to do is switch on the news, your news feed on your phone, listen to the radio, look at the TV. The world has become more volatile. There's absolutely no question about it. But particularly, I suppose, within the charity world, the changes that happened with SOFA reporting this year that came into play. For some charities, it was actually good because it actually brought them down a level. For the vast majority, though, they're already kind of thinking, right, we could potentially tip over into the next level, and what are those reporting requirements, additional requirements going to be? More financially literate trustees. This is an interesting one. Quite often we find ourselves when we're looking for a kind of board sign off, having to do very short presentations to a number of the trustees or board members, and I can definitely vouch for the quality of the questions. And no disrespect to people who sit on these boards and that, I've definitely taken it upswing. I don't know whether AI's driven it or what. Over the last 12 months. But yeah, no, you can see it. And obviously these people are there to kind of keep an eye on the charities and that. Same with your funders. So whether that's government funding, local council funding, maybe you have large corporate donors or that, and they are looking for they want to see how every pound is being spent. They want to see it's being kind of put to the maximum potential usage as with it. Flat or shrinking headcount. This can be a problem, as we've already discussed, within the finance function, but actually a problem in the wider charity as well sometimes, and kind of having to deal with that as headcount can shrink in the wider organization. That can also put pressure on kind of data flows, making sure people are adhering to kind of approval processes that you might have in place, or reporting timelines into the finance function. And then the last one is a really, really obvious one. We're all feeling it ourselves personally at the moment in terms of rising cost pressure. Hopefully what's happening in the Middle East now will hopefully start to take the sting out of some of that over the coming months, but it probably will be months. But the reality is, when you look back 30 years ago, the cost of a loaf of bread was probably 50 pence, and now we're talking pounds, and that's only going one direction. And that kind of impacts everything we all do, as well as your own organizations. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about one of our own clients. So OCN London are a training charity. They, as you can see there, they do a lot of training courses. They kind of 40,000 learners in a typical year. They are award-winning. But their finance function, this is one I actually know myself, I was involved with it. About 2.5 years ago. I first met Damien actually at a charity event, as it happens, and we kind of stayed in touch over the following 2 or 3 months. And really, he's not a finance person, but he deeply understands the pain of finance, and obviously, given the large volume of kind of invoicing and that they were doing for learners, even though they charged them a nominal fee because of their charitable status, and that it was absolutely breaking their IT systems within it. So over the course of the next 6 months, we kind of agreed a plan of action, and the difference that made to them was vast. 10 times faster invoicing. So what was days and days every month was cut to literally hours. They do the whole finance billing process in half a day now. That was a big change for them. The whole idea of obviously moving to the cloud, very obvious sort of things in terms of security. So as he said, he almost made himself redundant through the process, which was, I thought, was very honest of him. Reporting, though, is really where he came into play with it. He loved the ability to kind of connect the system outside of the suite of reports, dashboards, and that were in there, straight into Power BI, which he himself was very comfortable with. But it also meant they could layer in additional data from their course booking platform that he'd built himself into it. So overall, the data quality in terms of financial data, overlaying that with the course data themselves, was a huge change for the organization. And where they originally, when I first met Damien, had plans to kind of hire additional resources into the finance function, they've actually managed to keep that at the same 2 people that they had before we met.
Perfect. And I think with that OCN story, what I quite like about it is that it's not an exceptional one case scenario. It's the team, that size, that kind of level of complexity. It's something that we do see a lot, and it's probably most of the viewers on this call today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And everyone has their own version of pain when it comes to the finance functions. You're absolutely right. So yeah, and sometimes it's funny when we start conversations with potential clients, they might have something very specific. But as the conversations evolve over the following weeks or sometimes months, you'll find that there's other things that they haven't thought about, or other things they've actually just accepted as, look, that's the pain we have to deal with and nothing's going to fix it. And sometimes it's really kind of rewarding. And I do find that the rewarding part of the job is kind of going where you can find something else that they thought just couldn't be fixed. And you kind of go, right, let's find a better way of doing this.
Find a solution. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Lovely.
you look at, sorry, Zane, go on, yeah.
No, go ahead. So in this kind of next section, we kind of wanted to get honest about where the time actually goes, because as Andrew mentioned before, we talk to finance teams across the charity sector every week, and the pattern is almost the same. And once you get to see it a bit clearer, the path forward becomes a lot more obvious. So on this slide, so from the most of the teams that we speak to, month end isn't usually just a simple process. It is a survival exercise when it gets to those days. Manually consolidating spreadsheets that someone else may have edited, rekeying data between systems that just don't talk to each other, rebuilding a report because the version in the system isn't quite right, or chasing accruals at 9 p.m. on a Thursday evening. But here's what's quite frustrating about the left side of that slide. None of that work is wrong. People are still working really hard, but it's the wrong work that they're looking at. It's maintenance disguised as finance. The right side of that slide is what changes when you close those gaps structurally, not by hiring more people or by working even more hours, but by building a system so the repeatable stuff can just happen. So your multi-entity reporting can be in one place, integrations that stop duplicate entry at source, live GL data that can report on without exporting it and manipulating it first, and scheduled journals to run without a human triggering them every single month. It's not, in my opinion, it's not a vision or an ambition. It's already what well-configured systems can do. So, what actually enables a finance team to operate at a strategic level? In our experience, it does come down to three things, and they have to be in this order. So, data structure always should come first, because if your chart of accounts wasn't built with reporting in mind, or if your fund codes are inconsistent or your project codes are inconsistent and it doesn't grow with the charity, your entity structure may have been set up years ago and never really revisited. You can really automate all you want, but you're just producing wrong answers faster. So foundation really does matter before you start the journey. Then comes next is the automation. So the work that happens the same every month, like your bank recs, maybe intercompany, your period end journals, your scheduled journals, your report making. If a person is manually doing these, that's a choice your organization could be making. And it's an expensive one, and there's a human risk involved in there. The last step on here is visibility. So real-time dashboards drill through from a summary number to underlying transactions, getting a at-a-glance view of your restricted, your unrestricted funds. That kind of visibility, that means your FD, your team can walk into meetings already knowing what the questions are that they're about to be asked and having a real understanding of the numbers that they're presenting.
It's funny, the one that always jumps out to me on this one, Zane, is the data structure piece, because it's absolutely, you're right when you say it's the foundation of what is the finance output, which is reporting. I'll
Yeah.
share a very quick example of a client who came on board with us like 3 years ago now. They were a London-based early preschool charity with kind of 40 plus locations around the greater London area. But when we first met them, their chart of accounts was approaching 2000 GL stroke nominal codes, because basically what they did was they'd have to replicate the same structure for the 40 plus sites, because their system just didn't give them any other capability around that. So what we did through our onboarding process with them was we took that, we reduced it down to just under 200 GL codes, and then using the analysis structure, we gave them the breakout for each of those. But they said that it was such a profound impact on the reporting to the board, and that the board kind of on the back of it then started to sign off on additional tech investment, because they said, "Oh look, we've just had this big win on the finance side of it. Now what else can we do?" And it actually kicked off a journey that went on for about 2 years with them. That just kind of go, right, we can do more, we can do more, we can do more. And when you talk to them now, they're a completely different organization. They're really,
They work so differently now.
yeah, completely different, completely different.
So from the static board pack to the reporting, so we'll talk a little bit more about reporting and how that kind of works and how it changes, like in the example Andrew just said as well. So the left side of the slide, kind of the month-end packs rebuilt every month by hand. Backward-looking reports, already out of date by the time you're able to distribute it. Variances that you maybe only be able to explain after rerunning a report, and fingers crossed nothing else has changed. Trustees asking follow-up questions that may take days to answer or kind of pinpoint what that change was. If any of it sounds familiar, here's the thing I kind of want to be clear about. That's not a failure of the finance team. It's what happens when talented people are working with tools that weren't really designed for the complexity that you might be managing. So restricted and unrestricted funds, it is a complex world in the charity industry and kind of the accounting of it. Grant reporting, SORP requirements, it's all genuinely hard. And a generic accounting system or a spreadsheet was never really going to be handling it as elegantly as it should. The right side, so the interactive live reporting, it's consistent coding across funds. So you're never re-reconciling something. Real-time dashboards, so trustees can see a live picture as and when they need to. Variance analysis on demand, not after a 3-day rerun. And restricted and versus unrestricted funds visible at a glance. So the outcome, the boards are going to be trusting your numbers. FDs can walk into the meetings ready to lead the conversation, not just resent on it.
And the other important point, which we actually forgot to mention on that, Zaina, is it's that requirement sometimes for ad hoc reporting that you can
Yeah.
trust. Every organization has kind of the month end, the quarter end, the board level reporting that they know in advance of what is expected from them. But if someone comes in and kind of go, look, we ran this program last year, we're thinking of running it again. Can I have a report on it and some projections on it? And you're
Yeah.
kind of, oh, here we go. Start downloading stuff to Excel again and deep diving into it. And there goes my TV time for this evening as I kind of
Yeah.
scramble around within it.
Yeah. And I think that plays into the whole conversation of where do finance teams sit as a kind of a maintenance, just a processor, or as an advisor, kind of actually providing added value and strategic goals that the company has.
Yeah.
So on this slide, it's about making it all actionable. So all the quick wins that you could be doing to save time. So when you're leaving this webinar, you're not just walking away with a framework, you know what you can actually start focusing on next week. So the 5 things is where we see the fastest, most tangible returns. So automate supply invoice approval, the volume of manual chasing, paper trails, email threads that disappear when you do this. It's really remarkable. I know from my audit days when you're sitting by someone saying, when was that invoice really approved? And they're just going through thousands of emails of approvals. Next one here is reduce manual bank reconciliation. That one is actually going to be compounding and saving you time even more every month, especially if you can benefit from auto matching and machine learning, where they're able to learn your transactions and know how to allocate it more each month. Standardize your month-end journals. You don't need to be reinventing the same entries from scratch and kind of processing them. Schedule them, set them once and forget them. Use dashboards for budget holder reporting. So having the ability for your budget holders to access dashboards and reports as and when they need, instead of emailing it out after doing all the manual work of preparing a report. And replace manual consolidation with system-led reporting. So for those of you who are with multiple entities, this one alone changes the close process dramatically.
Yeah, that's a great big change, that one.
Yeah, for sure.
So
So on this slide, I think Andrew's going to be talking about how the question that everyone's probably thinking, how disruptive is actually switching systems?
yeah, we try to not make it as disruptive, but unfortunately, I'm being very honest here when I say this, there's always going to be a little bit of pain, a little bit of upheaval during what is a critical backroom platform for any organization with the finance function. So first of all, it's obviously finding the right partner. Maybe it's AccountsIQ, maybe it's one of the Sage products, Xledger, iPlicit, they're all out there. The names are very easily found with a quick Google search or whatever. They're all out there. So it's finding not just the product, but also the company that you feel you can trust to work with within that kind of process. So pick the product. Some people will say it's probably the easy bit. The fear comes when you actually get into making the change then as well. The way we run it, we've our own teams. As I mentioned at the start of the call today, I used to be on the onboarding team myself. Zane is a media manager, was also on the onboarding team as well. So we both kind of understand that world, and we also know when people have been missold, what a disaster it can be going through implementation then. The decision to change is not an easy one. It takes a lot of sign off in the charity world. The finance teams we find can sign off at them pretty quickly because they know what will work for them, what their needs are, where the pain is. But sometimes trying to get that through kind of board and trustee level approval can take time as they kind of balance the charitable endeavours that you're all working for. Setup migration is absolutely key to the success. And it's not just day one success, it's ongoing success of the platform. And I can't stress that enough. If we were in a mind to kind of just set people up that, yeah, you can log in next Monday morning and you can kind of process your bank transactions or do a journal, and we don't want to talk to you after that, we wouldn't be here as a business in this day and age. So our process is very much around kind of deeply understanding your reporting requirements, helping you to build a chart of accounts and analysis structure that leads to that fast, efficient, insightful reporting from the platform, and then layering in all the other bits. So do you want to use our AP platform? Are we connecting multiple banks? Do you have fixed assets that need to be managed? Do you have staff expense? Do you have volunteer expenses that you want to kind of bring in an efficient, cost efficient way, but time efficient way as well? And most importantly is training the finance team to be go live ready. So you have that confidence when it comes to go live, tends to be about 6 to 8 weeks after we start the project, that you can go in, you can transact. And dare I say, if you haven't thought of something or you haven't shared something with us, which sometimes does happen, that you know that the support is there around you for the first couple of months to make sure you can kind of navigate that as well. Parallel runs, yes, we do them. To be honest, we don't do them very often. And a lot of that actually comes from the confidence we give new clients during the implementation process, that when it actually comes to it, they're going to go, you know what, we're actually just going to switch straight away. Parallel running does have its uses, does have its place. Zane will definitely attest to this with her financial training. But sometimes it's an awful lot of extra pressure as well on a finance team, because you're now dual entering into two different systems. You've probably updated your coding, as we've discussed. So you're trying to remember, is it this code or is it this code, as I kind of creating those transactions in the system. When you get to go live, you're up, you're ready, you're confident to go. As I said, it's normally about 6 to 8 weeks after we start, but the actual onboarding process is actually kind of up to 3 or maybe even 4 months in some case, because your onboarding team who get to know you really, really well, and that during the pre-build, post-build, they actually stay on regular weekly calls with you to give you that deep support before the project is actually even signed off and you're handed over to our support teams and our account management teams as well. So we have a figure there at the end, 2 to 3 months after go live, people are starting to see a return on their investment. It's actually quite accurate within that when you talk to, especially the charity world, who are, as I mentioned earlier, the vast majority tend to be sitting on older systems. So a well-structured migration in totality, it's probably about 3 or 4 months, but you're probably live within about 2, maybe 3 months, depending on your requirements. There is a bit of disruption in it. We keep it as short as possible. We assign people from our onboarding team who've done multiple charity implementations, so they know about setting up fund reporting and SORP reporting and that, and kind of being able to set up the reporting with you to get the maximum out of it. So we were talking earlier on about a kind of a self-assessment framework, and if anything, I don't know if you want to screenshot this, I know Lisa said we'll share these slides with you, but it's a kind of a useful one to kind of sit with yourselves, maybe print it off, put it around your finance team and just see where they are. Maybe your chief executive, maybe one of two of your trustees might be kind of finance leaning, and just get them to circle where they are across the early stage developing or mature down the 5 kind of areas on the left there. So processing, reporting, data, controls, and decision support. No matter where we meet charities, when we're talking to them for the first time, they're never completely in one of these columns, okay? Depends on the charity itself, depends on the technology, not just in the finance function, but maybe kind of around donor collection platforms, whether that's using platforms like Stripe or PayPal or some of the other ones, or iDonate or that, or maybe around their CRM systems that they're using to interact with their donor base as well. It really is. It's an interesting exercise. We do have a version of this for businesses as well, just slightly different. But it's always an interesting exercise to kind of see where you land within that. So as I said, when Lisa sends this out to you, or if you haven't screenshotted this already, do kind of print it out, get out a red marker and just kind of see where you are and kind of see where you'd like some of them to move quickly if possible, and some of them kind of maybe a slightly longer plan around. And then it's kind of just bringing that into it, kind of going like, where are you at the moment when you look at that graph there? So it's kind of, are you at the reactive stage where everything's on the back foot? Your time pressure, it was supposed to be done at 5 o'clock yesterday, and yet we're halfway through Thursday already. Is it at the operational side where you're doing an awful lot of kind of manual heavy work? So maybe you're kind of recreating data that's in your CRM or your donor platforms. Maybe you're, as Zaina mentioned earlier on, maybe you're using email chains for approval, but somehow you're having to kind of manually kind of recreate that in the system then as well, and kind of add a note to it to say that, yep, Zaina approved it before Lisa approved it, and that's the bit of the trail as well. Maybe it's on the reporting side, but maybe you've got the first two in hand, but the reporting is kind of, yeah, look, we're always under pressure with reporting. And as I mentioned earlier, there's that kind of the reporting you know about, and then there's the reporting you don't know about. It's that ad hoc piece that comes at you every day, every week of the month within it. The analytical piece is where people love to get to. It's what finance people love to do. Yes, you qualified as a financial person. You've had some career progression through various roles over the years, but the real value is kind of in the last two stages of this, where you get into the analytical and the strategic piece. So the analytical is kind of going, answering those questions in real time. It's kind of really kind of getting into active partnering across the organization, where the strategic piece is kind of taking everything that happens in those other stages and kind of really starting to kind of look over the next horizon for your charity. Kind of go, where are we going next based on the data that we can trust that we already have in our system to say, look, we were running 5 charitable programs in H2 2025. 4 of them we did really, really well out of. We got really good feedback from the people who were benefiting from that. But the 5th one, we just weren't. And here's the data from a financial perspective that kind of proves that point. But we've also layered in some non-financial metrics into that to kind of further reason out why we're going to not have that one again in H2 26, but we're now going to explore another program for the year ahead. So I think this is the last poll we have for today. You'll be happy to hear. So which level best describes your finance function out of those 5 at the moment? So be honest. It's the fastest way of kind of maybe helping you to decide what that potential next step could be. So I suppose kind of go, where do you prioritize and how do you put these things in order? So the grid on the left-hand side is kind of going, I'm sure you've all seen versions of this before. So the top left is kind of high impact, low effort. Top right, high impact, high effort. Low impact, high effort on the bottom right, and low impact, low effort on the bottom left. So it's kind of do first, plan properly, avoid or defer, and fit around other work. So anything you're doing now that you feel kind of go, look, this is going to have a big impact on my day, on my week, on my team's day, on my team's week, and it's low effort. Maybe it's kind of, look, I'm going to turn off all internal messaging. I'm going to put the phone to silent, and for half a day, it could be something as simple as kind of going, look, I'm going to gather all the Excel files that we use as an organization and actually take a proper view of them and see if we can actually cut out some of these. Doing a simple exercise like that will just give you a lot more clarity, but it will also give you back time with yourself or your team. High impact, high effort. Obviously, yes, you don't jump into these things quickly. So it's kind of going, how do we plan for that over a reasonable time frame as well, so we can get the best from it as well. Obviously, low impact, high effort, they're the ones you kind of want to avoid or defer. So you want to kind of push them right out. And then, well, the other one's a very obvious one as well, fit it around other work, low impact, low effort, not strategically important. So if you look at the example on the right-hand side here in terms of what that can potentially look like, and it's actually a question we get asked a lot when we're talking to potential clients in the charity world, is kind of going, give us a path. that path could be 6 months, it could be 12 months, it could be 18, it could be 24 months in some cases, that we're realistically looking at because of the way the particular charity is set up. But I would always say, whatever that first period is, when it's 0 to 3 months, 0 to 6 months, or whatever it is, kind of start looking at your coding, standardizing report templates, and reviewing your processes, okay? You'll find even without changing a finance system, just even looking at that level at what you're doing can have a real impact on your organization. Everyone, I'm sure, on this call has a GL structure that they know. There's a couple of miscellaneous GL codes in there that everyone just likes to throw stuff into, and we'll leave it to someone else to sort out. Or there's GL codes that are literally because there was an historic transaction 5 years ago. It's still showing up on your reporting, and you're either having to journal it out or you're kind of having to just hide it away in the background because it's no longer fit for purpose on it. So even doing simple things like that and kind of starting to get your head thinking around it. The next phase is kind of going, right, how do we actually start to automate as much as possible? And this is where you start to bring in systems. Okay, so this is kind of going like AP is always a good one for easy adoption, quick wins. Expense management is another one in there as well, because just automating those two alone can have a massive impact on the finance team's ability to kind of get into that kind of strategic piece of thinking. And then, as I just mentioned, kind of moving beyond all of that, then it's kind of all right. Now we can actually do the work that we actually enjoy. You might have enjoyed kind of inputting purchase orders or purchase invoices when you first started out, but I'm sure everyone tires of that very, very quickly. And it's more that strategic thinking. And dare I say, you can even use AI to assist you with that piece as well. But I think that's where most finance leaders want to find themselves sooner rather than later. So
Perfect. I just saw the votes from the poll just now from the maturity curve. So it seems like a majority of the audience, and thank you for everyone for voting, is sitting in level 2 or level 3. And for us, that's familiar with who we work with, because those types of teams, they're functional, it's working, it's capable, but they're burning through huge amounts of efforts just to stay there. And moving to level 4, as Andrew said, it doesn't require a whole revolution or an upheaval. It usually requires fixing 2 or 3 things, bringing in 2 or 3 new systems, and to automate and get that analytical layer.
Yeah, and so sometimes it's just having that conversation with someone outside the organization just to give you other options, give you other ideas that you may not be seeing when your head's down in the weeds, as they say.
Yeah, definitely. So just to close on the why again. So it's easy to frame this as kind of a tech conversation, but it really isn't. It still remains very much a finance conversation and finance teams. So we've got a reactive finance team where we're familiar with kind of the reports after month end, spreadsheet consolidation, manual checks. The finance team is a processor. But then if we look at the right, we've got the insight that you're getting during the month, the real-time reporting, the embedded controls and the tighter controls that that are seamlessly embedded into your platforms. And then the forecasting, so the forward-looking, doing that fun work. And for the finance team to be acting as an advisor. So that shift from the processor to the advisor is really what it's all about. It's not about the software, it's about what the FD was actually hired to do. And it's about whether your organization can make decisions as you as a finance partner in the room to say, here's the numbers, here's what I think we should be doing next based on the numbers that we've got.
Yeah,
and that's probably... Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, sorry, Zaina, cutting across you. Apologies. No, but it's funny, like, and when you do talk to some of our charity clients, the early days, a lot of them talk about, oh God, it's this month-end reporting, and then they're trying to course correct because they've overspent, because they don't have the right visibility on a particular program or project that they're involved in. But because the reporting is taking so long at month end, it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks in some cases. It could be week 3 of the following month before they course correct because an expensive over costed invoice arrived in on the first week of the previous month. But it's that strategic piece that like you're catching these things quicker with the right
Yeah.
systems in place that you course correct mid-month. So when you're back on track then, or you have a narrative that says, right, we've incurred this extra cost on this program. So the following month we actually need to reduce our budget
Yeah.
for that period.
100%. And it is that strategic part of the role that is probably what most attracted finance professionals to work in that role in the first place. That
Yeah,
strategic bit, the bit that really matters and is pushing the company in direction.
absolutely.
And then just to close on here, so this quote I do love, it's a shift from reactive to strategic finance. It isn't about working harder. It's not about hiring. It's about removing that structural drag, the processes, the workarounds, the manual steps baked in maybe years ago that nobody had time to fix. And that keeps talented finance professionals stuck in the weeds. So the FD can do what they were actually hired to do.
So I think we're coming towards the end now, Zaina. So just before we get into the Q&A, I just want to be very clear on what's on the screen here at the moment. Um, it's complementary is one word we could use. Look, if anyone is curious on today's call about just even exploring some of what we've talked about further, or if you genuinely are interested in looking at Accounts IQ, basically Lisa will share our contact details and that over the coming days with you all. But if you want to kind of book in for a 30-minute conversation with myself or one of my team, I will absolutely guarantee it's not a pitch in any shape or form, but it just might help give you kind of a bit of insight on what is possible out there if you were to change your finance system, but also what's possible with what you have at the moment. We do have a lot of experience across the team. There's a couple of my team in particular now who are very, very focused on the charity sector as well. So as I said, we've kind of pretty much seen and heard it all at this stage. We'd love to kind of, if we can give anything back around that, please do reach out. And I will stress it is absolutely not a pitch under any circumstances. You can hold me responsible for that if anyone tips into that. So I suppose questions. This is the bit we always love, Lisa.
Thank you very much to both of you for a very insightful presentation. It was really, really interesting also to see the poll's answer. So yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for sharing your comments. We'd love to hear from you and get more questions in. I'll dive straight in with the first question that we have. And it's around payroll. So does AccountsIQ support payroll, or are there payroll packages that integrate with AccountsIQ? I don't know who would like to
Yeah,
take this.
we took a strategic decision as a business because of the variability in payroll rules and that every 12 months nearly, not to actually build our own payroll platform. So all of our clients use whatever payroll platform they want. We have a number of strategic partners in that space that we've full-blown integrations with. So click of a button, it all pulls across. But you can also, we've really, really nice, easy to use journal templates as well. So you can journal in your payroll, whether it's weekly or monthly, into the system.
Nice. Thank you very much for that. And then please, drop some more questions in the chat. I think looking back at what was shared and what we come across as well with when speaking with charities or when hearing from charities is that some of them, yes, spend a lot of time pulling reports together and they really, get the time to analyze them. So in your opinion, what is the first thing charities should automate to free up finance capacity?
I don't know what your opinion of this, Zane, is, because you see it from a slightly different angle than myself. But I always say, like, if you can automate as much of the day-to-day processing that goes on in a charitable finance function, the reporting becomes the enjoyable piece. That's the piece people genuinely love. And it's not the reporting in what we've talked about, where you're scrambling around and you're trying to get data and you're trying to make sure that the data's 100% right, and that it's actually automating everything. So your bank feeds, your approval process on purchase orders, purchase invoices, any automation you can do around journals, that expense management piece and kind of volunteers, or you're reimbursing them for shaking a bucket somewhere at the London Marathon or something like that. If you can automate all of that, genuinely the reporting comes easy. Now, there is a step before that, obviously, which is the data structure. So you have to have your chart of accounts and your analysis code and structure working really tightly, hand in hand, to make all of that work. But yeah, I've yet to find a finance person who doesn't love a good set of reports, but it's the trust in those reports, and it's the ad hoc reporting, and it's the time that takes to pull all that together that drives people mad.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, Zaina, did you want to add anything to that?
Largely do agree. I think it is the compounding effect of all those day-to-day transactional must-have tasks, must-do tasks that you can't avoid. It has to be done at some point, but it's just about thinking, how can we do it better? How can we do it smarter? Work smarter, not harder.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you both. There's also some couple of more questions coming in. So one of our viewers is asking whether obviously your solution is to be used to work along current accounting software, or is it a replacement, for example, of QuickBooks?
It would be a replacement.
A replacement.
So we see ourselves as kind of sitting in the mid-market AccountsIQ. So look, don't get me wrong, products like QuickBooks, Xero, great products, really easy to use. You can pretty much implement them yourself because they're very kind of simple, straightforward, and that's great for a lot of charities, especially the smaller charities who might have kind of less than 2 million in terms of income or that in any given period or year, sorry. But when those charities start to outstretch them and they're kind of going, right, we need something more, we're kind of piecing this together because we don't have the capability within those products. That's where you find yourself kind of in that mid-market space. And historically, before platforms like us existed, the jump was small to the very big ERP platforms. So we've all heard of products like Sage Intact at the upper end, even going into, dare I say, NetSuite. I've had a couple of charities on NetSuite that just absolutely confuses me. Again, great product if you genuinely need it, but I've yet to come across a charity that actually needs something like that. But anyway.
Gotcha. No, thank you. That's really important to offer this mid-market solution before the big giant and the basic yet powerful solutions that some charities outgrow of. So thank you. Another question from our audience attendee. Do your current charity clients find that the software makes statutory reporting easier?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in terms of the reports, we've got one-click reporting where at a click of a button, you're able to generate a live, ready to export, ready to distribute report. We've also got layered on with the reports is, again, as we mentioned, your chart of accounts, which you can create and customize and build to make yourself reporting ready. But then we've got layers of analysis you can add on top of that, where one of them could be your restricted, your unrestricted, your designated funding, where you'll be able to, at a click of a button, have that slice and diced view in your AccountsIQ package and then export out for your reporting.
Brilliant. That sounds great. Thank you very much, Zaina. Another question from Solomon. As a volunteer bookkeeper, what new competencies do finance team members need to become effective strategic partners?
Good question.
Just a good one, yeah.
I would say it's not about the competencies, but maybe the tools that you have to hand to become a strategic partner. Having something where you can get away from the weeds, as we mentioned, gaining time from automation, looking at the analysis side of things, able to bring better value to different conversations that you're having, being able to answer the questions that haven't already been asked, essentially. And the only way you'll be able to do that is with a system where you'll be able to get to the underlying transactions, really understand them instead of exporting raw data, manipulating it to, fingers crossed, get to the right answer. But yeah, so just I'd say the tools that you'd have for that.
Yeah, and the volunteer bookkeeper or anyone volunteering in finance, and we do come across a lot.
Mm,
Um, the ask of them is actually nearly higher because
Mm,
they're only dropping in for a certain number of hours, a certain number
yeah,
of days every
exactly.
week, and the workload just seems to never end
Mm,
for them. They're not getting time to actually take a step back and look at that strategic piece, as you're talking about, Solomon. So, as Zaina said, this is where tech really can help you because
yeah.
it can keep things going while you're not there
Mhm.
working for the organization. So even take something like a simple bank feed into it. So if you've connected your bank to your finance system and those transactions are coming in 4 times a day, if you're only working, say, Mondays and Tuesdays, when you come in next Monday, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, transactions are in the system.
Already
The
there,
system
yeah.
should be trying to automate as much of that as possible for
Mm,
you. So instead of dealing with a week's worth of transactions, or sorry, 3 days because you were there the Tuesday before, you're now only dealing with probably 5 or 6 transactions because the system hasn't seen them before and doesn't know where to post them to. So little things like that can suddenly start to compound up for you.
super. Thank you. Thank you very much, both. Um, we have a couple of questions around costs. So, one asking about aside from monthly subscriptions, what hidden costs should charities budget for? And general information on costs. So, what information would you provide around costs? Is it best to reach out to you directly? Because
Yeah, no, absolutely reach out to us. There is monthly costs, absolutely, and that's based on the entities that you require, the user types that you're going to use on the system. And not everything has to be done day one, by the way. Sometimes and you quite often phase it to kind of be right. Day one, we'll set up the single charitable entity, we'll set up the 2, 3, 4 people that are in finance. 3 months later, we'll start bringing in what we would classify as a non-finance user into the system where they will then be able to kind of raise purchase orders or start doing that approval for their programs, their departments, or whatever else. So you can start to layer it in. And that monthly cost includes all your training, your support, the backup of the system, the failovers, all of that sort of security piece as well. But what I would always encourage anyone when you're looking at your costs, like what are you paying for your current system at the moment? Is it a server sitting in the corner of the office somewhere? Do you have an IT manager coming in to do that? Are you paying for upgrades on it? What's the downtime when it fails as well? And there's a couple of people we've spoken to over the last number of years where they're saying, look, on average, we're losing about 2 days a month because we can't log into the system for various reasons. And that could be the system itself, or it could be they're trying to log in remotely using things like VPNs and that into the platform. And this all suddenly adds up very, very quickly into it. But not to hide from the whole cost thing, average charity, you're probably looking at a starting price of somewhere around kind of £400 to £600 per month for a
Mhm.
platform like ours. And it really depends what exactly you need after that. But then, as I said, we can also start layering in things like automating feed from donor platforms, your CRM systems, anything else like that. So we're giving you back time. And ultimately, it works out cheaper than trying to hire someone else into the finance function.
Super. Well, thank you very much for that. Well, I'm afraid this is all we have time for today. So thank you so much to you, Zaina and Andrew, and everyone for attending our session today. We obviously have plenty of other sessions available for you to watch. We have our Charity Digital Academy on how to manage charity finances, which is CPD accredited, and that's going to take place on the 28th of July. We'll pop a link to it in the chat. So if you're interested or if you think a colleague would be interested in this academy session, please do share the link with them. Finally, if you could share your feedback with us, that'd be fantastic. It's really important to us and helps us to continue to develop webinars that you will enjoy and obviously some great success stories and expertise that you want to hear. I'm seeing a couple of more questions, so we'll share that with the team and they'll take time to reply to them and we'll ensure that your question is answered. But thank you very much again to both of you, Zena and Andrew, for a very insightful presentation, and thanks everyone for joining. Have a good rest of the day and the week.
Thanks,
No,
Denise.
thank you
And
very
thank you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.